everyone, welcome to the second episode of Series 2 for the GBA Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb Sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow or by clicking on the link in the comment section. In today's session, Great British Entrepreneur Awards Head of Content Jonathan Davis will speak with previous GBA winners Ruari Fairbairns, founder of 1 Year No Beer, and Hannah and Sophie Pycroft, co-founders of Spectrum Collections. Ruari, Hannah and Sophie will share their experience of how a thriving community has played a significant role in their success and offer advice on how you can get your community off the ground. There is an opportunity to ask questions during this session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer these throughout the session. At the end of the webinar, there will be a poll available to provide feedback on what you thought about today's session. We would love to hear your thoughts, and please note that all answers will be anonymous. And with that, I'll pass over to our host today, Jonathan Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe, and Ruari, Sophie, Hannah. Really grateful for you joining us today and giving up your time. I guess I'll dive straight into it. Ruari, if I could come to you first. What does community mean to you?
Oh, everything. I mean, if I look at how we went about community, we really kind of stumbled into it. When we were setting up 1 Year No Beer, we were like, oh, should we do community or should we not do community? And I kind of think that, it was community before community was cool. Community was obviously out there. We weren't the first people to do it. I'm not saying that. But what I was saying is that it was like, oh, we didn't really know. And then, opened up community, and that just became the actual essence of everything we do. So now, in the long journey that has been 1 Year No Beer, now we realize that that is 100% all of it. It's all about the community. And more importantly, it's about empowering the community. And I think that that's where our behavior change model is unique, certainly with the way we're approaching into the alcohol space, is that if you can give people the tools for them to be empowered to then support other people through their behavior change. So somebody on day 20 is supporting somebody on day 1, it solidifies their own behavior change and it kind of compacts it. So yeah, I mean, community is the lifeblood. It's running through everything. It's everything we do. We have an incredibly engaged community, of champions who love the brand. So everything.
Excellent. And Sophie, Hannah, what about you? What does community mean to you?
We always talk over each other, so we're like, who's going to go? I think the first thing that springs to mind for probably both of us when you say community, we just immediately think social media, and our online community obviously is how we built the brand. So we used to, a couple of years, 7 years ago nearly, when we started the business, the word community wasn't really a thing. It was just kind of like brands, products and customers. And now we don't really view our customers as a transactional thing. Obviously it is, but our customers are our community. So there is, we speak to our community all the time. We think being social is such a huge thing, and that's what one of the kind of founding parts of the business for us is just being a social media brand. And community is all about communication for us. That's what it kind of boils down to, really.
Yeah, we use the community space to help us when we're developing new products now as well. It's more than just people saying, "Oh, I love that brush. I love that color." We engage with our community now, and we use it almost as like a consumer research tool as well. So because we know it's a really open and honest space, and you can't really get better feedback than reaching out to your community. So
yeah, it's instant as well. It's instant and it's constant. So it's not just a normal community. It's not like a real life community. It's like a 24/7, all in everything.
Beast.
Like Rory said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And Ruari, I know that you said that you kind of stumbled into the concept. So Hannah and Sophie, I want to ask you, I know you obviously mentioned that community didn't exist back then, but was it kind of part of the plan from the outset to build a community, or was it kind of something that as the business grew thought, oh, actually this is kind of a key part of the business, we really need to focus on it?
Jonathan, we had no plan. There was zero plan. I mean, there was a made-up business plan.
Sounds familiar.
A crappy template from online that Hannah did, and I didn't even know we had one. So no, it wasn't part of the plan.
No.
But, well, we knew exactly how we were gonna reveal the brand. Almost was basically through social media. So in terms of what community was at that point, I guess it was what we kind of planned on loosely, wasn't it? We knew we were going to post on the internet to an audience that we didn't have at that time, and we were just hoping that we were going to get a good response to it. And it was a community response that was the reason that the brand became a success, really. But yeah, no, it wasn't a plan, but it did certainly quickly become what we knew we needed to do.
Yeah, it's quickly become like one of the pinnacles of our brand, really, our community now. But like So said, back then we just thought, oh well, we'll use social media more from a visual tool rather than a community tool. But obviously social media is also a sharing tool, and you share that amongst the online community. So I suppose it all kind of fits in together, but we just kind of initially used social media as a visual tool more so than a community tool. But now it's like huge. So
yeah, absolutely. And Ruari, you mentioned stumbling into the community element. Was there a point that you kind of realized that your audience or your customers became a community?
Well, I guess, we started off originally with two platforms. We started off with Facebook and our own forum software. And then as people came in, we just saw how engaged people came. And then it was all just about listening to the community, just like the guys were saying, they fed the direction for everything that we did, really. The feedback and hearing how people were going through the challenge, their challenges, their needs, their wants, the bits that were missing. And so we would change the product to try and highlight some of those things. And then we saw that we were saying the same stuff over and over and over again. And like, well, how can we actually make that part of the journey so that people are not asking those questions and they've got all those tools? And so all of the product iteration became community. But I sort of have this vision, and I know Sophie and you guys are doing exactly this, but I see this huge growth area in co-creation, and the right word has escaped my ADHD brain. So but it's using the community to actually build your product. There's some really interesting platforms out there like Chaotix, which is helping businesses bring their customers in to build product, build marketing, build these different things. And I think that's the future. Community is so key, so critical. And the fact that we can, through technology and everything else, tap straight into that. And, what we were saying just there, like, the instant response of a community is like, okay, we really messed up there. We've heard that. And it's like that. And it goes off woof, like a wave, a Mexican wave. And you're like, oh, how do I stop this ripple quickly? Or in a positive effect, it's like, wow, look at the momentum behind that. Our community's got really behind it. So it is a living beast. And I said beast as you were, because it's like, okay, you're sort of watching it, monitoring it, listening to it, feeding it, and as well being guided by it. So but without a doubt, certainly today, and this is why we're on this session, right? All brands, all companies should be thinking about their community. Community is not just a closed Facebook group or a forum. Communities everywhere, on every social media platform, anywhere people are discussing your brand or your product. And it's like, well, how are you nurturing that community? Because you have a responsibility. They're talking about your brand, and how are you engaging wherever they are? They are talking about you.
Yeah, and you mentioned the kind of instant feedback, and obviously that can sometimes be negative. I guess that in itself is a positive for you as business owners, because there is that honesty between you and your community, that if you do mess up in whatever way it is, that you are told instantly and you can rectify it. And in all likelihood, there are plenty of suggestions in there as well. So I guess there's that positive element of it as well.
Yeah, we take suggestions constantly. We use our platforms as like interactive conversations, really. obviously Twitter is the most conversational one, so there we tend to have Twitter chats and stuff like that. And Instagram, we do a lot of Q&As or this and that and kind of thing. But in terms of, yeah, there's always ideas, and what we try and do is involve our online community in the process, but without creative freedom as such, because it's where we find the difficulty with involving everyone in actually like a co-creation kind of style is because we're a market leader in what we do. What we tend to find is if we tell people too early on what it is we're actually doing, then we put ourselves at risk of other brands copying us, which is always a consideration we have to have at the forefront of our minds when we are talking to our audience. Is, you know, how soon do we reveal what it is we're working on because of that risk? And so with us, I suppose the feedback stage of the product cycle is really after we've launched our first product in a collection. Maybe we were always either going to work on a reorder or something like that, and with us it's hardly ever a straightforward process because we'll listen to what our community has said, what the feedback is. If we're in a constant state of, it's like an improvement state of mind constantly. So yeah, the girls and the team are always busy because it's never a straightforward process, is it? It's like, oh, well, people want more of this style brush or people want more of this. So we'll always build that in. So our product range is just evolving constantly as a result of our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Following on from that is also deciphering the noise, you know, because often the noisiest people are not necessarily the people who are absolutely your advocates and purchasing your product. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. Actually, the people who are making the most noise are the people who are not paying. And so you have to be like, well, hang on a minute, how much of that noise do I listen to versus my actual engaged customers? And, you know, deciphering that and making sure that you're listening to all voices, yes, but you're listening to the right voices, especially when it comes down to making product changes and iterations. Like, great, that's your opinion. Is anyone actually going to buy it? How many people are saying this? Where are they from? What have they purchased? All that stuff. So,
totally.
but yeah, it's a powerful tool for sure.
It is. It's good. I think it's good for small tweaks and like adjustments. But ultimately, what we believe as business owners and market leaders is that it has to come from our voice, really. It has to be one voice that directs the brand. And then we have all these other voices and all these contributors in a sense that will help us shape maybe what we encompass as a brand. But ultimately, we do have such a strong product development vision for the company that it's quite hard to let people into that. Something that we would like to do more of, but it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll literally just go to the community for feedback on, say, like a color, or do you prefer this brush or this brush? You know, so it can be like little tweaks, but we would never really kind of put ourselves really out there in terms of create your dream formula for a new lipstick, because ultimately we kind of have knowledge of the brand and historical data and stuff, so we kind of know what the direction that we want to take, but ultimately we'll put it out to our community to give them a little bit of creative input. And then it is nice to do that, because when the end product is released onto market, they can be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I did a poll, or I did a survey and gave my opinion. And that's something else we utilised right at the beginning of lockdown, actually, was an online survey that we put out to our most engaged community, and asked for their honest feedback on our products and the way that they shop. And, you know, it was really helpful. So I think it's definitely really beneficial for businesses to call upon their community to get feedback, and that's ultimately really helpful and really honest and really true. So
yeah, just quickly going in for exactly what Hannah was saying there, you know, as an example where suggestions from a community might cause friction against a vision. The vision is absolutely the key part, right? Knowing where you're going. You're not going to please everybody. It's that simple. You're going to upset some people. One exact decision, which I'll talk about right now, is that we are going to start retailing alcohol-free drinks. Alcohol-free drinks are incredibly helpful in helping people change behavior under our behavior change model. But if you look at traditional systems, and some people, you know, who've gone through traditional ways of changing their relationship with alcohol, they literally think that alcohol-free drinks are the devil. So, but you have a number of people in our audience who still think and believe that. So there will be upset, there'll be people frustrated, why are you doing this? I don't understand, etc., etc., etc. But we just have to stay very true to what our path is. We're disrupting a space. We don't expect you all to understand it. Sometimes we're just going to have to tow you along. If we lose some of you, I'm sorry, love on you, but it's best we part ways, because this is our vision and we're extremely clear on where we're going. Some of those decisions are uncomfortable, but it comes from having that really strong vision and communicating it.
Yeah, that actually, I was just about to move on to. We had a question through the chat asking if there's any time that you've had community feedback and decided to kind of go against it and not listen to it. So I guess that's a nice example there, Ruari. Interesting. Did the idea for the alcohol-free beer, is that something that your community has kind of expressed interest in wanting?
Well, do our community consume alcohol-free beer? Yes, absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, is your community kind of asking you as a company, like, we would love it if you created?
It's not necessarily asked like that. It's saying, for instance, all of our American consumers have no visibility of alcohol-free products. They say there's nothing in America, and we're like, well, actually there is. There's lots. So how do we give those brands visibility to our consumers? And almost all of our consumers are choosing to drink alcohol-free drinks. So why are we not the ones who are retailing it to them? So there were all of those factors to take into consideration as we went out and testing this. But again, it's like a test. So we go, like, that's the vision. We're going to go do this. We've got some people who say that they're detractors from it. We've got a lot of people who say they're very interested in it. We launch it, we go live, and then you see what the community says. If you're like, suddenly get this massive backlash, you're like, well, maybe we have to reverse that decision. But I think that's really doubtful. But you've got to be wary of that. And that is, once again, the beast of community. It really, you do control it, but you also understand that it can have a lot of control over you if you let it, I guess. Do you agree with that, guys?
Yeah, I mean, we try not to, we personally don't, we lead the design and we lead the product development. And like we said, we really like to try and involve the community as much as we can. But ultimately, one of the things that we feel has the least amount of visibility for our community is all of the work and all of the processes and all of the costs and the cost of the boring bits, the margins. And,
oh, so boring.
All this stuff now with Brexit is ultimately the most snooze fest stuff that we've got to work on all the time. And it's like, that is the bit of the business that we don't necessarily want to share with our community. We don't necessarily want to burden all our like brand enthusiasts with, because it's so boring. I'm boring myself, but that is what the cost of doing business is these days, and that's where a lot of our resource goes. And we have to incorporate that into our products, and we have to keep our RRP at a certain level. Otherwise, we're just, we've actually gone through a couple of years where we've realized that the profits on some items that we've been selling huge volumes of, there is none. So it's just a case of we've had to really, I suppose, not listen to our community a lot in that sense. When people are like, oh, but I wish it was cheaper and I wish I could afford it. And it's like, well, that's why we're trying to always develop new products so that we have got something for everyone. Yeah. Because ultimately, as a business, we need to remember, because this is what we've never ever done, and we need to remember the boring bits, which is the margins. So yeah, we tend to disagree sometimes.
Source it.
I know, when people are like, oh, I really want to buy this, but then we do have a lot of opportunities where we might do a flash deal or something like that, and then we know that our community goes crazy for those days and those bursts. Like we had a huge Black Friday, we had a huge Christmas, and we've just had a huge January, so we know that we're doing something right. But that is definitely one thing that we tend to have to open up a little bit more on, in terms of if people, they think that something's quite expensive, and it's like, well, it's expensive because of this, this, and this.
Yeah, I think that's something that we try and do with our community, is try and be as transparent as possible. Because we have got the ability to do that, because it is just myself and Sophie. We're not like a massive conglomerate company. And we do reveal the transparency behind the business through social media as well, like directly to our community, kind of the good bits and the rough bits as well, because ultimately they're, the community is just people like everyone else, and they don't expect everyone to be perfect and the brands to be perfect. So I think that's kind of an important part of engaging with the community, is being real as well. It's not all unicorns and rainbows as much as we sell it that way.
Yeah, we think of ourselves as being our customer as well. So we're always like, well, it's difficult. That's the thing with online, is to get, sometimes it has to look great, but then the big thing for us is quality. And one of the things that I think is that people will remember the quality of the product a lot quicker. They'll remember the quality of the product for a lot longer than they'll remember what they paid for it. So if they're still using it 3 years down the line, they're like, wow, that was a good buy. So that's what we try and constantly improve on, as well as the quality.
Love that.
Something that I want to touch on, you've both talked about how vital the community has been in the actual success of both your businesses. I'd be interested to know, are there any kind of milestones or projects that you think you might not have been able to achieve without the community behind your business? Ruari, I'll come to you first.
Well, yes. Just before so the bit of pre and what Hannah and Sophie were saying there is, I remember the journey of community, and the journey of community started with me doing everything. So that would be answering customer support, doing the engagement, dealing with difficult situations. Right, remember that I've got some people who drink quite a lot coming in to not drink, and we've had suicide things and stuff like that might go off at 1 o'clock in the morning. And in the early days, I was doing everything, and it was unbelievably tough. The emotion around a community as well, like all of the things and the drama that can go on. So when you have an sort of an in-house or an enclosed community, it can be very emotional. It can be very stressful and tiring. So I just wanted to, and then, as the business has grown and we have a team and all of those things, I'm set quite far back from that now. Of course, I still engage in my community. I still get onto Zooms. I love being in the community. That's the lifeblood of it. But I have teams of people now who look after the engagement and all of the parts into the community, escalation processes, customer support teams, all of those things. So, but that just takes a long time to build out. And I think the uniqueness of beginning the community with that way was, I was so vulnerable and honest about my own experiences. And, that's how we set out the group, that's what we created. So we created this really safe space. And now you've got tens of thousands of people who are still behaving that way. So it's a very unique space cultivating in the beginning. But I think the biggest thing was, I couldn't have done without community, is in 2017, we were thinking about going crowdfunding. And I sent an email out to our members and said, hey, this is where we've come from. This is my story. And this is what I'm trying to achieve, right? We've got really, really very big goals, and we're looking for a 6-figure investor to help us seed the round. Could you introduce us to somebody? And I thought maybe I'd come into, 1 or 2 emails. And I came in the next day to 74 emails, and we raised 1.1 million in 5 weeks just from our members. And now since then, we've raised over 3.5 million in funding, pretty much entirely from our members. And, it's like the ex-global head of mergers and acquisitions at HSBC, 10-year director at Facebook, senior guy at Google, chairman of the biggest angel network in the UK. So we've helped some very successful people, not just change their relationship with alcohol, which is what the product does, but actually go on to change their lives. So much so, we've had investors say literally these words to me: Ruari, even if I lose the 100 grand I'm investing in 1 year, no beer, it wouldn't be equal to the life change that I've had from taking your product. So I think that when you have a community and you over deliver and you provide something which has a real impact on them, then they will champion you and champion you and champion you.
Yeah,
wow, that's really powerful.
It's something similar for us, really, because again, 2017 must have been a bit of a funny year, but when our whole warehouse burnt to the ground,
oh, wow.
and we lost everything overnight,
we
posted it all on social media. But originally we were like, okay, well, should we just make the whole website sold out? And because that's what we were doing when we were doing it in the early days, and we were picking and packing all the orders and doing everything as well. We'd have to make the website sold out because we couldn't physically keep packing fast enough. So when the fire happened, it was a complete accident. Thankfully, no one was hurt, and it was our external fulfillment provider. we were like, right, okay, we'll just make the website sold out and people just won't be able to buy anything. And then we said, oh, well, I think actually we should just put it out there that the fire happened. We've basically lost our business overnight, and please stick with us, and we'll be back as soon as we possibly can. And that's what we did. We just posted some messages and explained what happened, and the outpour of support from our community was unbelievable. We still managed to launch a product range 3 days later from a temporary warehouse, and that was a massive success, and people supported it fully. And the result of that launch helped us continue as a business, because thankfully without those sales it could have been a very different kettle of fish. And then when we did come back with new stock after the fire, again everyone supported it fully. So, and I think that's another that's as a result of being really transparent with our community and just open and honest. And I think it's really important to do that as a brand or as a business, because people respond to people, don't they? They don't really respond to kind of
corporate messages.
Faceless brands.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the essence of the entrepreneurial journey right there, which is the whole warehouse burnt down, right? The whole warehouse burnt down. You're on your knees, and yet you use that as a springboard to success. And that's it in a nutshell. It is going to be tough. You're going to be burnt down to the ground probably several times on your journey. If you work out how to use that to pivot into a springboard, then you'll keep unlocking new growth. So well done.
Thank you. And you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Hannah and Sophie, I think the fire, was it a day or two before the Cardiff regional final when you guys won, and obviously you were trying to deal with all of this while we were there, knowing that you guys had won, and panicking about whether you were going to be.
Oh no, we weren't going to come, were we? Because we're like, oh guys, to be honest, our warehouse has been down, so we know we said we were coming, but not sure if we can make it. And
I know. You were like, no, please come.
Yeah. So we came. Woo!
And you've both talked about your kind of own personal stories there. How important has that element been in building the community and almost kind of fostering a kind of buy-in to you as entrepreneurs as well as the brand? Ruari, I'll come to you first on that one.
Well, pivotal and critical to it really, is the story, or the founder's story, because of course in the early days it was me and Andy, so that story is still how I raise all the investment, how I do every single, the story is the story of our members, because it was in the choosing to change my relationship with alcohol from a place of not having a problem, but as in, as this thought of like, I think alcohol is causing me more trouble than I realize, which I think is what speaks to so many people. And then, thinking about it in terms of, well, we didn't have a problem. So, all of the support out there is like, either you are okay. And by the way, okay, you can still be drinking 4 bottles of wine a day and going into work. And technically speaking, because you're going into work, you're still okay, right? Or you're off the edge, right? And off the edge means now you're going to go and get stigmatized, labeled. You're going to be that way forever. You're one of those people. Go over there to that naughty corner. And we were like, well, we're not that. We're just somewhere in here because we want to change, and there isn't anything. So that's really what my story and then 1 Year No Beer set out to change, is let's just push that apart. We're actually quite a lot in this space over here where people would traditionally be labeled and stigmatized because they are drinking heavily, and yet right up to anybody who's just drinking 3 glasses of wine a week, right, which is anyone who's drinking, let's be honest, and we're for all of these people. And then let's just talk about it as in being better and healthier and fitter and keep it aspirational and all of that stuff. So that was absolutely key. But also, I think that if you look at my journey, so I was in counseling from 6 years old, ADHD, counseling through school, suicide attempts at 13, struggle with my brain, went searching, trying to understand this absolute fruit loop of a brain that controlled me. And it was either brightness and light or just absolute destruction and stuff. And I just flipped all the time between the two, depending on what hour you were talking to me. And so I was like, I have to try and work out this stuff. And so, first book I read front to back was, self-help book when I was 12 years old. And I was like, that's it, stuck on self-help. So I went on this long journey. But it means that by the time I came round to setting up 1 Year No Beer, all of that was the reason why I'd gone through that stuff. Like, so I talk about this so often, but I'm so totally connected to 1 Year No Beer in terms of the business and who I am. It is who I am. And, the impact that I wanted to have on the world, that's what this is. And so because of that, connected to things like destiny, meaning, purpose, those are really strong words. That means that when I go into engage into the community, I've talked about everything, all of my dark side, all of my light side. There's no area or stone I haven't untouched. And so by communicating like that with my community, I gave them the space that they could communicate in the same way. And that's what you've just seen, a huge outpour. Like, people come into our community and they're like, wow, this is unbelievable. Like, look at the way people are communicating with each other. In fact, we've had people come in externally and look at our community and just go, how have you done this? How have you created this kind of space? So I think it all came, not all from me, but a large part in sowing that seed in to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sophie, Hannah, how important has your story been to building the community?
Well, for the first 2.5 years, maybe 3.5, a while, we completely were invisible. We didn't let anyone know who it was building the brand and creating the business, because we were just two girls in Barry in a garage with no connection at all to the makeup world or to the product that we were selling, really, because we come from a brand and a marketing background. And obviously what we didn't really have at the very beginning of the business was any credibility. So for us to try and sit in a dark room with a very basic warehouse setup and put something on the internet and expect people to buy it seemed like a really big stretch. Yeah. So we put the brand first, and the brand
identity.
We created the brand before we put our faces to it, if that makes sense, because we needed to build it to a certain level and gain a certain amount of customer trust before we could turn around and say, oh, hi, it's just us. We're not owned by Estee Lauder. We're not a big corporation who are turning out these great products. So it's a bit of the opposite, really, from Ruari's. We didn't go about the brand because we ourselves felt like we were the kind of the launch pad for it.
People would buy it,
yeah. We didn't position ourselves as the kind of at the heart of the brand, really, until we did. I suppose the turning point of that was more or less the fire, I suppose, at that point when we were like, we need to kind of say what's happened and how we're going to claw our way out of it. And even at that point, even now, we don't always engage as much as we think we could with our community as from a personal perspective. We're trying to, and we'll probably do some today off the back of this conversation, but we are still quite a small team, and we're still effectively quite a small business, and we haven't got any funding. So we are still very much in the business rather than kind of that element of the business, just the brand founders kind of thing. We're still working every day, earning a wage and going home and still working.
Yeah, I think as a result of kind of talking to more of a community and people, when we tell people about our journey and they'd be like, wow, like that's amazing, like you've achieved so much, like how have you done it, like I need to know, like this, that and the other. And I think it was when we did start to put ourselves out there a little bit more, and people really responded to that, and they were like, wow, you're two women in business, like you've done all of this, like how, like. And then I think as a result of that, really, and feedback from the community, that's kind of why we've put ourselves out there a bit more. Whereas originally in the early days, the business is 7 years old, so back then people on social media and in that community were more interested in, like, I think it was more of like a brand orientation. So if people were more attracted to brand, whereas now I think people are more attracted to supporting small businesses, supporting family businesses, and they want to know who they're buying from. So I think even though we have established the brand now, the fact that we are a family-owned women in business, and our community know that, still elevates the brand even more. So I think we've kind of succeeded in establishing a brand that people, if they had no idea it was me and Sophie, they'd still look at Spectrum and be like, wow, that's a brand that I want to buy into. But then I think there's the other side of the community that's like the entrepreneurial spirit, the women in business, business founders that are like, wow, like I want to achieve with my business what they've achieved, so I want to support their business. So I think they're kind of in synergy now. But in the beginning, if we literally put ourselves out there in our pajamas in Sophie's garage, no one would be buying any makeup from us, that's for sure.
No, we still be there now.
That's a really, really interesting contrast, and I'm just conscious of time because we've got quite a few questions from the audience. But Hannah and Sophie, you just talked about some of the things that you'd like to do a bit better with your community. Ruari, is there anything that anything about your community engagement that you'd like to improve on?
Yes. The first thing is, Sophie and Hannah, what you were saying, Hannah, about not being in the first 2 years is when, and I can't remember the word, it'll come back to me, but when you don't feel like you are worthy as an entrepreneur, and you feel like you're held back, whatever that's called, can't remember that. But I just want to thank you, imposter syndrome. You guys are awesome. Thank you. So I just wanted to say, we all have imposter syndrome, right? That is part of the entrepreneurial journey. We definitely don't feel like, and trying to break through imposter syndrome and, call it what it is. We all have it. I just wanted to bring that up. Is there something? Yeah, there's loads I want to do better, so much better. So when I look at the long-term vision, and I spend all my time out in that long-term supervision, exhausting the team with crazy ideas. But when I look at the way community is created, so we want to we've just built our app. It's going live in 2 weeks' time. And that's just version 1 of our app. The app is really going to be central to us scaling. It's key to changing people's relationship with alcohol. Community must be a factor in there, but we can do community better. And I'm not talking about going and spending billions to be better than Facebook, but I'm talking about the way the algorithm works. So it's just not helpful for behavior change. It doesn't help somebody come in who's just new to make sure that they get visibility. It's the opposite way around with Facebook. So we want to give new people visibility. How do we do that? We want to make sure that people who give good comments that are really supportive and positive get seen as comments higher. So how do we do that, right? So if you can create a community structure which is based on positive affirmation, delivering good value, and a sort of a person's engagement is improved over time doing that, that's the kind of things that we want to try and achieve. As well as, really, if you look at the stages of what we're trying to do, step 1, move to mobile app technology, subscription on the front end, scale the business through the app using a freemium model. That allows us to reach a much, much wider audience. Okay. The second thing is for us to build out a sort of Weight Watchers for alcohol model. So this is a user comes in, changes their relationship with alcohol, then wants to give back. So they could be anywhere in the world, become a coach, run a local area, support people changing their relationship with alcohol. And the third piece is then to start to diversify into different verticals: gambling, sugar, technology addiction, social media. We don't like the A word. We use habit change because we keep it in lifestyle changes. But really, that's what we're trying to achieve with community.
Excellent. I think that's a good place to move on to some of the audience questions. So the first one I'll ask comes from Camille, who asks if any of you went through stages of no or low or limited engagement, and the periods where you really had to keep plugging away to get the community that you've got now, and how did you motivate yourself on those days, if any of you have had the experience with that?
We got stuck in we don't know if we were in an Instagram blacklist or something, but obviously Instagram is our biggest online community platform. And I think it was most of 2019. Every single day we would drop maybe 300, 400, 500 followers, but there was no reason why, because we were always really engaging. We were posting consistently, and we weren't spamming anyone. And obviously we're real people on the account, not bots. And we just didn't really understand what was going on, and we still don't really know what the reason was now, because we did try and dig into it, but you don't get any information. But
I did contact Instagram, like, hello, are we on a blacklist? Because this is not right.
Yeah, it was really weird. But
Don't care.
Well, no, there was, they were like, oh, see if you're a Facebook person. They just fobbed each other off between Instagram and Facebook to see if anyone knew what was going on. None of them did. But yeah, I think what we did at that point, I think if you do have any downward spirals or bits where you don't see the growth that you're working towards, and it is really, really hard work, I think what we kind of looked to is consistency and just making sure everything we were doing was completely like really, really consistent, really, really clear, rather than trying to change up everything that you're doing, because like chances are you're not doing anything wrong. It might just be, it could literally be like what we had, where it is a bit of a, I don't know, anomaly. Yeah, just something weird, because it's so vast and mass, you know. We still don't know why, but we did persevere and we did continue doing the same style of content we've always done, and we are out of it now. So yeah, I know that's not a really specific answer, but I would definitely 100% say consistency.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, if you do feel like you've hit kind of like a wall with your social media and growth and community, I think if you're going to change anything, maybe change one thing at a time and see how that goes, and see the response you get from that, because you don't want to change everything overnight, because that takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and it might just be one thing that you can do a little bit more of, that people react to and engage with more. So I think if you're going to do something, then change it a little bit at a time and see how that goes.
Ruari, is there anything that you've experienced?
Could you reword the question again, because I missed the part? I just want to make sure I get it right. Sorry.
Yeah. So just have you ever gone through a period where engagement in the community was really low or reduced, and if so, how did you kind of motivate yourself to keep going?
No, not really. In terms of the engagement in the community, it's always been incredibly high. How have I motivated myself to keep going? I mean, like Sophie and Hannah were saying, the journey is unbelievably tough if you look at all the difficult times. I literally remember being on the phone to my mum, love you mum, on the phone to mum, and crying my eyeballs out, going, I just don't understand why, when what we're trying to do is going to really change the world in an incredibly positive way, like what we are trying to do is amazing, it's a beautiful thing, and yeah, I don't understand why we keep getting all this beep come our way. I just don't understand. And she was like, Ruari, if you're going to show up big in the world, you're going to be tested. So I guess that was like, okay, well, I guess bring it on then. No, but I think that, so finding that extra piece of motivation in the dark times and the hardness, I just get reconnected back to, what is the vision? What is it I'm trying to achieve here? What is is that in line with my meaning and my purpose? So I think this is really key. Like, if your business is connected to who you are, like what you're trying to achieve ticks those boxes, and you've searched for that place, then you don't need motivation. You don't need drive. It's just, it will keep on coming. So that's how I've had it.
Yeah, excellent. And just before we have one final question, and just after both of your comments there, we've had a message from one of our attendees, Helen Lewis, who just has thanked all of you for the positivity that you've talked about on social media, because it's so often negative, and they've said that it's really refreshing to hear you both talking about how you're building your community and the positivity, especially with two teenagers. So yeah, I just wanted to pop that in before the final question. Coming from, well, obviously we've had a very, very tough, 10 months now, lost a lot of businesses, but also a lot of businesses started. For any startup that is looking to build a community now, that has started in the past 10 months, your main one big piece of advice, Sophie and Hannah, I'll come to you first.
We always say that, staying positive is such a huge thing. And it kind of links with what Ruari was saying, is the fact that, none of us, I don't think, have started this business to get rich. Me and Han certainly didn't, and I don't think Ruari did either. It's always been somewhere connected to who you are as a person and what ultimately makes you happy. So I feel like if it doesn't make you happy, don't do it. But also, don't do it expecting to reap the rewards if it's what you want as a financial reward, because especially at the moment, that might take a long time. It did for me and Han. It took maybe 3 years before we took a wage. But if it does make you happy and you are getting some kind of fulfillment out of it, then don't try and be too self-critical, because I feel like a lot of people who maybe want to start a business, who are running a business, the biggest obstacle that will be in their way is themselves. So if you give yourself a break and just ultimately feel like every step forward is a success, then you are going to do really, really well, and hopefully it keeps a smile on your face, really.
Yeah, and I think linking that back to community, and like Soph just said, I think the main thing to do at the moment is just be positive. And particularly at the moment, with everyone spending so much more time on social media, now is the perfect time to really engage with that community, be social, have conversations, find out what they like about your business, what they want to see different. And like we said, you know, you can feed the beast, but take the feedback and construct it so it matches and aligns with your overall vision. But now is such a good time to engage with the community, because everyone is so much more engaged at the moment.
Excellent. And Ruari, to finish us off.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly what you said. So the positive thing is so key, staying positive out there into your communities. I think just a little bit of, so if you're starting a community today or thinking about starting a community, you know, in the beginning, learn about community where it's cheap or free, and that's like a Facebook group. If you look at what your target audience is, so you know, we're really targeting 30 to 55-year-olds, you know, male, female, 50-50 split. Where are they? They're on Facebook. So Facebook group makes sense if that's your target audience. If your target audience is different, then choose the platform. I listened to somebody the other day saying, go on every platform. And I was like, why would you do that to yourself? You already have, you know, squirrel disorder because you're an entrepreneur. You don't need 55 platforms to focus on. Choose the one where you know your community is the majority of, double down on that and become really good at it. Become really good at engaging with your people on that community, because that'll help you as well as build that audience. And yeah, if you're doing a closed community, Facebook groups are great to start with. Obviously, you know, you want to move on to another community platform where you can own the data and the user and make sure they have a good experience and all of those things. But start where it's free, cheap, and easy, and where your customers are. And then the only other thing I was just going to say is, if I can help with anybody, if anybody's watching this and would like to chat to me some more, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Just shoot me a PM. Happy to chat and help around community.
Brilliant. Well, Ruari, Sophie, Hannah, the last sort of 45 minutes ago has been informative, insightful, inspiring, and really powerful in places. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sure I speak for all the audience when I say that. So yeah, really, really thank you for taking part. And with that, I will pass back to Chloe.
Thank you for having us.
What an incredible session. Thank you, Ruari, Hannah, and Sophie, for joining us today and sharing your expertise and knowledge. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
I know, Chloe, that you circulated our Twitter handle, so we'll just keep an eye out, like Ruari said, just echo what he said there, and just if anyone's got anything that they really wanted to speak about or any questions, then we will personally be there today.
And I'll just say, it's tough, but keep going, keep going,
oh, yeah,
keep going.
100%.
Keep going.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Our next Lightbulb session will be at the same time next week with leading social entrepreneur and passionate changemaker Mel Young, MBE, as he discusses the role of social entrepreneurs and how to create social change with purpose-driven businesses. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of this recording later on today. You can find the replay and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.haysummit.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Ruari, Hannah, Sophie, and Jonathan.